South Korea is not a country of massive land, enormous natural resources, or overwhelming military power. Instead, one of the greatest strengths South Korea possesses is its culture. From K-pop to Korean dramas to films like Parasite and shows like Squid Game, Korean entertainment has reshaped global perceptions of Korea itself. And this did not happen by accident. Korean entertainment succeeded globally because it adapted itself to become more accessible to global audiences. More than proud to propose on side governments. Few points are framing before I move on. First, cultural exports are extremely important for South Korea. Unlike superpowers with massive populations or military influence, South Korea relies heavily on culture, innovation, and global visibility to maintain international influence. That means Korean entertainment is one of South Korea's most important economic and diplomatic assets. Second, what are the goals of the Ministry of Culture? Its goals include not only preserving Korean culture, but also to support economic growth through cultural exports and increase tourism and investment. Government, therefore, has strong incentives to help Korean culture spread internationally. Third, what do you mean by adaptation? Let me make this clear. We are not defending the destruction of Korean identity. Instead, we support making Korean entertainment more accessible to global audiences. This includes fusing English lyrics, adding multilingual subtitles and dubbing, hosting international concerts and marketing and storytelling structures easier for global audiences to understand. Note here that Korean entertainment can still retain core Korean cultural elements while becoming globally accessible. For example, works can include Korean traditions, Korean aesthetics, Korean settings, and Korean values, even when translated or marketed internationally. Moving on to our side's first argument, better preservation and promotion of Korean culture. The thesis of the argument is simple. Culture only survives when people receive, understand, and interact with it. Without interaction, culture becomes isolated and loses influence over time. Often, many foreigners struggle to fully understand Korean entertainment because of language barriers, unfamiliar cultural references, and lack of accessibility. To fully understand many Korean cultural works, audiences may need knowledge of Korean language, humor, customs, or social context. But realistically, most foreigners are not going to spend years learning Korean before engaging with Korean entertainment. Then, how does adaptation make Korean entertainment easier for global audiences to understand? First, using multilingual subtitles or partially English lyrics, for instance, allows Korean entertainment to appeal more easily to foreigners because there's less of a language barrier and the content becomes easier to understand, even while still retaining key Korean and cultural components. Second, people naturally care more about cultures when they actually understand the context behind them. When entertainment includes English lyrics, multilingual captions, dubbing, or internationally accessible storytelling, audiences become more interested in and knowledgeable about Korean culture itself, which makes Korean culture more widely recognized around the world. But importantly, this does not mean Korean culture disappears. We are not removing Korean identity, but simply making it accessible so that more people can interact with it. For example, Korean entertainment can still contain Korean traditions, Korean mythology, Korean settings, Korean aesthetics, and Korean values, even when it uses multilingual captions or voice actors for other languages. And because foreign audiences now better understand Korean culture while also emotionally connecting with it, they become more likely to learn more about Korea and its values. What are the impacts here? First, Korean culture becomes preserved and recognized across the world rather than remaining culturally isolated. Second, Korean culture expands because millions of people who otherwise would never engage with Korean culture are now exposed to it. Now moving on to our second argument, economy and culture. The thesis of the argument is that adapting Korean entertainment for global audiences strengthens both the Korean economy and the long-term sustainability of Korean culture itself. South Korea lacks the massive population size, military influence, and natural resources of larger global powers. Because of this, cultural exports are uniquely valuable to South Korea since culture is one of the main ways Korea can achieve international recognition and influence. Then, how do we increase this soft power? By adapting content through global marketing or English accessibility, Korean entertainment reaches far larger audiences. This, in turn, boosts tourism, and more people across the world are incentivized to protect Korean heritage and culture. Most critically, this economic boost can be redistributed and be used to fund more domestic cultural and entertainment projects. Three impacts here. First, South Korea experiences economic growth through increased tourism, cultural exports, and global entertainment revenue. Second, more jobs and opportunities are created within Korean entertainment and cultural industries. Third, Korean culture gains strong global preservation because more people around the world become emotionally invested in Korean heritage and cultural success. And for this reason, proud to propose on side government.
Good afternoon, everyone. I stand as the leader of the opposition. And we strongly oppose this motion. A Ministry of Culture should exist to preserve and support cultural expression, not to teach artists how to market themselves more efficiently to foreign consumers. At some point, culture stops being an expression of society and starts becoming a product designed for export. This is the world government moves us towards today. More than proud to oppose. First, 3 points on framing. First, government misunderstands the role of the Ministry of Culture. Its purpose is not simply maximizing profit or popularity, but preserving the cultural heritage and supporting long-term cultural sustainability. Second, this motion is not merely about promoting Korean content globally. We already do that in the status quo. Instead, government specifically defends Korean entertainment changing itself to suit foreign tastes. This means more English lyrics, more Western marketing, more Hollywood-style storytelling, less uniquely Korean styles of entertainment. K-pop becomes closer to Western pop, and Korean films become more Hollywood-like. Therefore, government must defend a world where Korean entertainment increasingly changes to fit foreign preferences rather than Korean artistic identity. Third, Korean entertainment can already succeed globally while remaining deeply Korean. For example, Parasite became globally successful despite strong Korean cultural references and themes. In fact, Korean entertainment may be globally popular precise because it felt culturally different from Hollywood. Moving on to my rebuttals. The opposing side talks about how better preservation and promotion of Korean culture. However, government assumes that Korean entertainment, more globally accessible, automatically preserves Korean culture. However, our side showed that accessibility often comes through simplifying and westernizing content in order to appeal to foreign audiences. At that point, what is being promoted globally is no longer fully authentic Korean culture, but a diluted and commercially modified version of it. In fact, Korean entertainment became globally successful precisely because it was culturally distinct from Hollywood. Audiences were attracted to unique Korean storytelling, aesthetics, and emotional styles. Once companies began changing content around foreign preferences, they began slowly weakening the exact identity that made Korean entertainment globally appealing in the first place. Government confuses global consumption of Korean products with the meaningful preservation of Korean culture. Second, economy and culture. We never denied that adaptation may create some economic growth. The question is whether economic growth justifies weakening cultural authenticity. The Ministry of Culture should prioritize preserving Korean identity, not maximizing profit by reshaping culture around foreign market preferences. Government also ignores that over-Westernization may actually weaken Korean entertainment long term. If Korean media increasingly resembles Hollywood or Western pop culture, it loses uniqueness that originally attracted global audiences. Ironically, by chasing global popularity, government risks destroying the exact cultural distinctiveness that made Hallyu globally successful in the first place. Now moving on to my arguments. Number one, cultural dilation. The thesis of this argument is that adapting Korean entertainment for global audiences gradually weakens Korean cultural identity itself. Why is this inevitable? Because in order to maximize international appeal, companies increasingly rely on English lyrics, simplified cultural references, westernized storytelling structures. This has already happened in the status quo. Today, many global
POI.
yes.
So, like, why do you assume adaptation destroys Korean identity when content can be both about like Korean and globally like understandable?
I will talk about that later in my speech. Moving back on, this Korean culture becomes simply simplified into a globally marketable image. This creates pressure for creators to produce content that feels internationally familiar rather than uniquely Korean. In the worst case, Korean entertainment loses its distinct identity entirely. Three impacts here. First, Korean identity becomes less visible in media over time because cultural expression is gradually replaced with globally familiar trends. Second, younger generations increasingly become westernized versions of their own culture. And third, Korean entertainment becomes increasingly whitewashed, where cultural uniqueness is replaced by whatever is easiest to sell internationally. Um, Second, westernization destroys the very appeal of Korean entertainment. Many people enjoy Korean entertainment precisely because of Korean features. Authentic Korean households, languages, traditions, and storytelling make Korean media feel culturally distinct from Western entertainment. Um, and adaptation ironically destroys the exact uniqueness that made Korean entertainment globally successful. For these reasons, proud to oppose. Thank you.
Korea is one of the most famous and recognized countries in the world, but not because they have overwhelming military strength or valuable resources. It is because Korea's new pop culture boom, and we need to be able to increase the amount of influence we have in the short amount of time when we have the culture boom. A few rebuttals before I move on, though. Firstly, the opposition tells you that Korean media becomes something international when we do this. But then, firstly, we'll tell you in our characterization of what we will do, and also in our framing, that We'll keep Korean culture, but add modifications like voice changes, more English lyrics, English like subtitles to make sure that international viewers still understand what we're talking about, and it's not way too Korean, so that these viewers don't understand what we're talking about. Second, not only this, when we make it too much Western, audiences will leave because they are not only interested in K-pop because it's fun, but because they also want a break from the culture they were a part of being for a long time. Western audiences want to listen to not only K-pop music because they like K-pop
POI.
is fun, but also I'll take that in a little bit, but also because they're too used to Western music and they want to try something new. What's your POI?
My POI is how do you stop international platform algorithms from like determining which Korean stories survive long term?
Well, I guess your POI meant that how do we determine which stories like stay Korean? We're talking about how like these movies or like media is going to be more integrated into like Western society. So like movies like Parasite might suddenly like start having like international lyrics, no international subtitles or like English subtitles. But like so I think that answers your POI. And then moving on to our third argument, but then they also tell you suddenly that then when it becomes like too international, then like the movies are like going to be part of international culture, and that like these are going to have to compete with Hollywood and stuff, and that they're gonna lose audiences. But that's exactly why these movies or types of media won't be too Western. We're just saying that we're gonna keep the same thing, except make it so that there's a little bit more of integrated Western culture. And now moving on to our third argument on global power and global influence. The premises of this argument is that adapting Korean entertainment for global audiences transforms Korea into a major culture power internationally. Entertainment strongly shapes how people view countries. As Korea entertainment becomes globally accessible through adaptations, more people around the world consume Korean media,
POI.
learn Korean, and purchase Korean products. This gives South Korea enormous soft power and cultural influence internationally. We also see this in the status quo. For example, BTS speaking at the UN or Parasite winning Best Pictures, all dramatically Korean global visibility and reputations. Now, opposition may argue that adaptation risks cultural dilution, but let me weigh this in two ways. First, adaptation is necessary because global audiences are unlikely to engage with content they cannot understand or access in the first place. A culture cannot meaningfully spread internationally if language and accessibility barriers completely prevent interaction with it. Second, influence itself is how cultures survive globally. When cultures are ignored internationally, they gradually lose relevance and visibility compared to cultures that are actively consumed, appreciated, and discussed worldwide. Global engagement, therefore, strengthens long-term cultural survival rather than weakening it. And for these reasons, very proud to propose from the government bench.
Honorable judges, I stand as deputy leader of opposition. While my leader has already explained why adapting Korean entertainment for global audiences risks weakening authentic Korean cultural expression, I would extend our case by showing how this adaptation increasingly benefits giant entertainment corporations while weakening smaller domestic creators and long-term artistic diversity within Korean entertainment. Now moving on to my rebuttals. Government argues that adaptation helps Korean culture spread globally by making it more accessible to international audiences. However, accessibility is not the same thing as changing entertainment to fit foreign expectations. Korean entertainment already became globally successful because audiences were interested in authentic Korean storytelling and culture. They may also argue that adaptation strengthens Korea's economy and global influence. However, economic growth does not automatically justify cultural commercialization. A Ministry of Culture should prioritize protecting authentic artistic expression and domestic creativity, not simply maximizing international profitability. Most importantly, government fails to explain how industry increasingly dependent on global algorithms and international markets avoids being more corporatized, standardized, and creatively restricted over time. Now, moving on to my argument, globalization benefits large corporations while weakening the smaller domestic creators and audiences. How did this happen? When the industry prioritizes global audiences, companies increasingly invest only in large-scale Netflix productions and content that is internationally marketable. This is because platforms prefer content that can easily succeed across multiple countries and generate massive viewership numbers. This means producers are encouraged to create content that is safe, simplified, visually massive, and globally familiar. As a consequence, mid-budget Korean films and smaller entertainment agencies begin to disappear as they struggle financially. Independent creators struggle financially because they cannot compete with giant corporations that have massive marketing budgets, international partnerships, and privileged access to global streaming platforms. The only shows that are left are large-scale shows from big companies willing to pay huge royalties to platforms like Netflix. But smaller Korean creators are often the ones producing experimental films, regional stories, culturally niche works, and authentic portrayals of Korean society. When they disappear, Korean entertainment becomes narrower and more corporatized. This leads to three harmful impacts. First, smaller Korean creators lose opportunities because the market increasingly rewards only globally profitable content. Second, domestic cultural diversity decreases because only internationally marketable entertainment survives. Third, Korean entertainment becomes controlled by corporate incentives rather than artistic or cultural expression. Stories are no longer created because they reflect Korean society, but because they perform well on global algorithms and international trends. The Ministry of Culture should protect long-term cultural sustainability, not maximize international popularity at the expense of domestic creativity. Now, moving on from my argument. Governance case assumes that international popularity automatically strengthens Korean culture long term. However, our side shows that entertainment becomes increasingly dependent on global profitability and platform algorithms. Smaller creators and culturally niche works gradually disappear. Additionally, Korean entertainment became globally respected precisely because it was uniquely Korean, not because it abandoned Korean identity in any way to become globally standardized. So even if adaptation creates short-term popularity and economic success, that does not necessarily outweigh the long-term risks of corporate control, weaker domestic creativity, and reduced artistic diversity. Now moving to my conclusion. For these reasons, we oppose the adaptation of Korean entertainment for global audiences. A Ministry of Culture should protect authentic creativity, artistic diversity, and long-term cultural sustainability, rather than encouraging entertainment industries to increasingly prioritize global marketability and foreign expectations. Therefore, we are proud to oppose. Thank you.
As the South Korean Ministry of Culture, our duty is to help Korean entertainment grow, survive, and influence the world. Korean dramas and music and have like shown already have like powerful stories, emotions, and creativity. But if global audiences cannot understand the language, culture references, and like those styles of Korean culture, Korean culture will stay limited to people who already know it, more than proud to stand on side proposition. That is why we support adaptation. Adaptation does not mean removing Korean identity. It means keeping the heart of Korean entertainment while making it easier for global audiences to connect with it. Through better subtitles, global marketing, international collaborations, Korean entertainment can reach more people without becoming less Korean. Our side wins because we prove two things. First, adaptation spreads Korean culture and increases Korea's soft power. Second, adaptation protects Korean creators by giving them bigger audiences, more money, and more opportunities. In the end, Korean culture is not weakened when the world understands it. The opposition oppresses the idea that the true Korean culture and identities come from the actual spirit from our country. However, we believe that our side also is possible of regulating the global activities for the globalization to work progressively. Our side's first impact is that Korean creators get more money and opportunities. If Korean entertainment appeals to global audiences, it reaches a much bigger market than just South Korea, and this will lead to like more viewers, more streaming deals, and more concerts, which can higher the reputation of our country's cultures. So, what is the impact? This protects Korean artists and companies because success overseas gives them the money and platform to keep creating better content. Our second impact is that Korean culture becomes more visible. Without adaptation, some foreign audiences may not understand Korean jokes, traditions, or like social rules, but with adaptation, Korean culture becomes easier to access. More people can understand the story and connect emotionally. So, what is the ultimate impact? This matters because culture only becomes powerful when people can actually understand and engage with it. Before I move on to my two strong clashes, some rebuttals. The leader of the opposition from UP stated that we have to preserve culture and keep our traditions in our country. However, Judge, we've already shown you from previous speeches that our side can hire the reputation and make our own culture stronger by stepping out globally. We also already have shown you that our side is not fully changing the lyrics to like westernized cultures, while we are also using Korean lyrics to show our cultures more openly to the westernized people. The government creates a world where Korean culture is not just watched by Koreans, but recognized, respected, and loved globally. Opposition may protect purity, but they risk making Korean entertainment smaller, less competitive, and less like influential. We believe that the actual result we can get after K-pop idols step out globally to show our own cultures, our side's first clash is that which side best spreads Korean culture globally. Many global audiences may not understand Korean history or like humor immediately. If Korean entertainment refuses to adapt, only people who already understand Korean culture can fully enjoy it. That limits Korea's soft power. But if Korean adapts, for example, through better subtitles, more universal themes, and like more collaboration through like global like standards, like we can like enjoy like as like a globalization. So once they enjoy it, they become more interested in the Korean language, food, and like tourism. So what is the impact? This helps Korean gain more global influence. Korean culture becomes more visible and more respected. Lastly, my second clash is which side better protects the Korean entertainment industry. So Gov wins because adaptation helps Korean artists and companies to survive in the global market. So if Korean entertainment only focuses on domestic audiences, its growth is limited. But if it adapts to global audiences, Korean creators can gain more viewers and more money, which will lead to a better outcome. And at the end of the debate, Judge, government wins because we create more access, more influence, and more protection for Korean entertainment. So, for all of these reasons, proud to propose.
Good afternoon, everyone. As the opposition, I'll clearly show why adapting Korean entertainment for global audiences slowly weakens Korean culture, increases Western influence, and gives more power to grand corporations instead of real creators. First, I'll start with my rebuttals. Firstly, the government said adaptation helps preserve and promote Korean culture, but this argument destroys itself. They admit foreigners struggle to understand Korean culture because of language, humor, and customs. Their solution is to change Korean entertainment so foreigners can understand them more easily. That is not preservation, that is delusion. If culture must constantly change itself for outsiders, then over time it stops being authentic culture and becomes globalized entertainment with Korean labels attached to it. The government acts like global audiences will not engage with Korean media unless Korea in itself first, but the status quo already proves them wrong. Millions of people watch Korean dramas and listen to K-pop because they are unique and different from Western media. People were willing to learn Korean phrases, Korean customs, and Korean culture because the content stayed authentic. The more Korea changed itself for global audiences, the more it risks losing the exact identity that made it popular in the first place. Second, the government says adaptation strengthens the economy and culture. But economic success does not justify cultural damage. Fast food chains also make huge profits worldwide, but nobody says they preserve culture. Their argument treats Korean culture like a product instead of something valuable on its own. They focus so heavily on global markets that they ignore the long-term costs. Once entertainment becomes designed mainly for international profit, profit, companies will naturally prioritize what sells globally instead of what reflects real Korean identity. Third, they say adaptation increases soft power and global influence, but influence built on changing yourself for international approval is weak influence. They bring up BTS and Parasite, but those examples actually help our side more. BTS became globally successful while still deeply Korean. Parasite won Best Picture because it showed Korean society honestly, instead of trying to become Western. These successes happened because Korean entertainment was authentic, not because it was heavily adapted. Now I will move on to the two important clashes in this debate. The first clash is cultural identity versus global accessibility. The government believes culture becomes stronger when it changes itself for outsiders. Our side completely rejects this logic. A culture survives because it keeps its identity, not because it removes difficult parts to become
POI.
easier over time. Once entertainment begins changing language, humor, themes, and storytelling styles, mainly for global audiences, Korean entertainment slowly loses what makes it Korean. Our side wins this clash because we protect long-term cultural identity instead of sacrificing it for short-term popularity. The second clash is creativity versus corporate globalization. The government presents adaptation like it helps everyone, but in reality, giant entertainment corporations benefit the most. Large companies have the money to create globally marketable content, while smaller creators become pushed aside. This creates safer and more commercial entertainment instead of bold and creative storytelling. Over time, Korean entertainment becomes controlled by profit and international trends instead of artistic freedom. Our side wins this because we protect creativity and diversity instead of corporate control. In conclusion, the government's model slowly turns Korean entertainment into something more global but less Korean. It weakens cultural identity, increases Western influence, and gives more power to corporations. For these reasons, I am proud to oppose this motion. Thank you.
This debate was mainly about whether Korean entertainment should stay culturally authentic or increasingly change itself to fit foreign tastes. Government focused a lot on accessibility, popularity, and economic growth. However, we showed that these benefits come at the cost of weakening Korean culture identity itself. Government assumed that making Korean entertainment more globally accessible automatically preserves the Korean culture, but our side showed that this often requires more westernization, simplified cultural references, and changing Korean entertainment around what foreign audiences already prefer. Over time, Korean entertainment becomes less uniquely Korean and more commercially shaped for global markets. Most importantly, Korean entertainment became globally successful precisely because it felt different from Hollywood. Audiences were attached to unique Korean storytelling, emotional styles, traditions, and culture. Once Korean entertainment starts imitating Western trends and more, it slowly loses the exact uniqueness that made it globally appealing in the first place. Government also talked about how a lot about economic growth, but we showed that the Ministry of Culture should prioritize preserving Korean identity and culture sustainably, rather than simply maximizing profit or popularity. Economic growth means very little if Korea sacrifices cultural identity that made Hallyu successful. Ultimately, Judge, this debate was not about whether Korean entertainment can succeed globally. It already does. The debate was about whether Korean culture should reshape itself around foreign preferences in order to become more marketable internationally. We believe culture should remain as an authentic expression of society, and for those reasons, we are more than proud to oppose. Thank you.
Judges, the debate comes down to one core deadlock. Who proves to you that they make it better for the South Korean Ministry of Culture? But note, Judge, that this is an actor motion, meaning that everything the opposition says that is not directly linked to the South Korean Ministry of Culture should not be credited. They talk about how this means how like integrated Korean culture into international culture will make Korean culture become international, but they never actually explain or prove to you how this is directly impacted the South Korean Ministry of Culture, which means that this argument does not fully count. But we tell you how all of our arguments are like back to the South Korean Ministry of Culture, meaning that all of these still stand in the debate. But also note, Judge, that they never
actively respond clearly to our arguments on how it impacts South Korea's soft power and global influence. Not only this, they never respond to our POI on how the opposition does not think about using the both Korean and global cultures in an effective way. But moving on to the deadlock I mentioned before, we told you how one, we increase marketing size, two, we preserve Korean culture more, and three, we have more global soft power. Meanwhile, the opposition side tells you that they make the Korean culture more more Korean because we make it more Western when we integrate it into Western culture. We win because of two standards. First, likelihood. Both teams tell you that they preserve Korean culture more. But we tell you specifically that we have more because when we get more money or more audiences, it's easier to preserve our culture because not only does culture only succeed or stay in when everybody watches it and listens about it, but also when global audiences also care about it because when it's only limited to that specific country, it somehow dies out in a matter of years. But that's why we win on the clash of likelihood. But we also win because of quantity. We tell you that we have more audience, more money, and more people who look at our media, think back and visit Korea. But let's be charitable to the opposition side and say everything they tell you is true, even though we proved otherwise. We still win because one, we make more money to preserve other cultures, and two, because we still preserve more culture on our side. Because even though they still have culture, we save them for the whole world. And for these reasons, proud to propose.